Okay, I think I'm recording now. Am I recording? Yes, I'm recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to podcast. Today's guest, today's guest is going to have the conversation that challenges how we think about masculinity, confidence, and relationships in the modern world. We are joined by Ross Lewin, an educator, entrepreneur, and founder of Embodiment and Sacred Society. Ross works at the intersection of masculinity, nervous system regulation, and modern dating, helping men develop confidence that is grounded, ethical, and rooted in self-awareness rather than performance. His work focuses on teaching men how to lead themselves and relate to others with clarity, integrity, and emotional steadiness. Ross, welcome to Thoughts at Last. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, bro. I'm doing good. Thank you for coming on the podcast. So, Ross, yeah, on Thought Out Last, I and my listeners, we want to get to know more about our guests, aside your accolades, your achievements, and what you do. We want to get to know you as a person. What are your hobbies? What's your favorite food? Your best color, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I have a lot of varied hobbies. My favorite is I love to dance. Actually, a previous career, I was a professional Latin dancer, and I
Yeah,
still love to go salsa dancing. I love bachata and zouk, and I love the partner dancing community. Also, I love to play music. I'm a trumpet player. My partner Eden and I, we have a DJ trumpet duo that we take around the world, performing at festivals, and we also throw our own events where we perform and bring in other artists. And yeah, I love to meet people. I love to talk to people, learn their stories. Um, I enjoy like listening to people and getting to know them better. So yeah, I'm a big dancer, big musician.
yes.
I love my community.
Awesome. Awesome. Once again, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for coming on the Thought Out Last podcast. And thank you for letting us to get to know you. Now, on to my first question for today. There's a lot of confusion around what it means to be a man today. I mean, you and I know that the
Yeah.
confusion has gotten so much worse. And what do you think most men are getting wrong when it comes to being a man?
I think people, when it comes to being a man, they just forget to be themselves. And being a man and worrying about what the expectations are from society, there may be some helpful expectations from society to help raise a family, to provide. These provide, helpful motivations for men, but they lose their own uniqueness. And everyone is this combination of their masculinity and their femininity and everything in between.
Yes.
And to just latch on to what it means to be a man often means forgetting what it means to be yourself.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that response. Now, you talk about confidence as something that can be trained. How is real confidence different from what people usually think it is?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of like fake it to make it type of,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
suggestions out there. And, confidence is just trusting that you're going to do a good job at the things that you do. And it also has this
Yes.
element of letting go of perfection. So if you're so worried about the risk of messing up, the risk of failure, you end up not taking those risks. So
Yes.
yeah, confidence isn't about perfection. It's about just doing the thing and being willing to fail forward, to be willing to try something new and allow yourself to actually try some things out. And no matter what happens, you still have that love for yourself. So that's like something that is kind of missed in the performative aspect of confidence, and just like understanding that even if you don't get this right, you're still going to have an opportunity to try again. You're still going to have that self-forgiveness that allows you to take those risks. And that's actually very attractive in this world. A man who's not letting himself be held back by expectations, but just
Yes.
like putting himself out there, enjoying the experience. And, that comes from practice, that comes from nervous system regulation techniques, that comes from
Yes.
breathing. We have so many different ways to practice being confident.
Honestly, I love the way you put it. Somebody that's confident is essentially someone that takes pride in his or her ability. Sorry, his ability, or you know what, his or her ability. In case we have female listeners, his or her ability, and when you're able to do that, you're essentially a confident person. It also allows for growth because if you trust in your ability and you find out that your ability is not up to par, you would actually be open to improving yourself, be open to getting better at what you do, as opposed to, like you said, being those things you see on social media or just being arrogant. People are now mistaking arrogance for, being confident and whatnot. But anyways, that's another discussion. Now, you introduced the concept of big depth energy. Now, can you explain what that means in simple terms? And can you give us an example?
Sure. Yeah, big depth energy is about the quiet confidence of a secure man. So
Yes,
it does go back to this concept of if you notice that you have made a mistake or that you have, failed in some way, that doesn't affect your self-worth. And it's also about not needing to convince. You're just being, you're conveying your worth just by existing. And
yes,
yeah, the people that are lacking in confidence and this big depth energy concept, they're needing to remind people of how amazing they are, and they don't live with that, intrinsically in their body, in their soul.
yes,
So they're having to like project that on to other people and make sure that they know. So big depth energy is more about being secure. And I keep talking about the possibility of failure and the possibility of not being perceived as you see yourself, or
yes,
for the height that you see yourself. So yeah, it's about not needing others to know how amazing you are. And it
yes,
comes out in the stability of your energy, and it comes out in the confidence of your words and your willingness to repair and be accountable, and not being afraid of being seen in a lesser light, and knowing that you have the ability to grow and that you're always growing, and not letting the small stuff bring you down.
wonderful. Now, what I love the most about, big depth energy that you've explained to us is the fact that you don't go around seeking other people's validation. You understand? You don't need it. That's why you see sometimes you see some men that, in fact, to kind of judge someone's masculinity to a certain extent, just how do they feel when they are around other people? Do they seek for validation? Do they need people to validate them? Especially, do they need women to validate how they feel, how they appear, how they carry themselves? The more you do that, there's a chance that you are not as masculine as you might think. I don't know if I'm correct with this. Is this a fair assessment per se?
The question is women's approval a part of the assessment of our masculinity?
Now, the question is yeah, essentially, yes. If you seek women's approval a lot, it should mean that you are not as that such a person may not be as masculine as they might think.
Yeah, I mean, I think an element of masculinity is just being grounded in your own worth, like I said, and
Yes,
to 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 lead, to bring your ideas forward and offer choice to people. And I think if you consider other people's opinion of you too much, especially women, then you're
yes,
no longer bringing yourself forward as an option to people. You're kind of just like receiving and following, which has a place.
exactly.
Not everyone needs to be hyper
The leader.
masculine all the
Yes,
time, you know? And so I actually do think that women's opinions are super important and they shouldn't be brushed off. Like,
yes,
actually, evolutionarily, humans, have relied on the rejection power of women to shape our decisions and to shape our growth. So I think there is
I
a
said
healthy
yes, yes,
point
yes. Actually,
to taking feedback from women. But if you take it
yes,
too
I
far,
agree.
then yeah.
Yes, I mean, if not for the fact that, there's a saying that if not for the fact that man has been chasing women since the dawn of time, I mean, we wouldn't have all this amazing technology. You understand? Man has been trying to make life as comfortable as possible for women to the point where they would have enough freedom to, express themselves and even pursue their own freedom, because the world is now relatively safer compared to when we were just like little patches of kingdoms and cities around. But now we are countries, we have the internet, we have technology, we have, you know what I mean. You essentially understand what I'm trying to say. So it's amazing that we're living in wonderful times to the point where we've gotten the world has getting to a point where men don't have to be hyper masculine anymore. Not that it's a bad thing per se, but then again, we see a certain level of balance where there still needs to be a lot of masculine men around, and it's kind of fading away. But we're going to get into that as we go on with the conversation. Now, you mentioned men often swing between passivity and overcompensation. Why do you think that happens? And can you guys explain it a little bit for maybe those of us that may not understand?
Yeah, the balance between following and leading, passivity and leadership. Um, a lot of us, just about every human is conditioned to want to seek approval, or to just from our childhood to allow people to have high opinions of ourselves. And that
Yes,
comes from a survival instinct. And it's actually quite challenging to sit in someone else's disappointment. And, that's something that is ingrained in us from a young age. But at a
yes,
certain point, in the growth of your masculinity, you have to decide what you stand for. You have to decide what you'll allow and what you won't allow. And
yes,
if you allow other people to dictate that, then you lose yourself. And they lose respect for you because they just see you as someone who's agreeing with them at all costs. You don't have your own opinions. And it's part of the confidence thing to be able to stand in an opinion that differs from the world around you, and
yes,
and hold on to that and not lose it because that, loses approval.
yes. This reminds me of an experiment I think I read about or I saw in the video on or YouTube short. I actually can't remember, but I do remember the contents of the video or the article or whatever I got the information from. But it's a real thing that happened. Now, an experiment was conducted, I think, in the late 90s or maybe early 2000s. I really can't remember the exact date. So in this experiment, a group of people were put in a room in a very big hall, actually. And these people were actors. Now, a cloth was hung from the ceiling. The cloth hung from the ceiling was red in color, but the organizers of the experiment told the actors to say it's blue in color. Now they brought 20 people, 10 men and 10 women. Now the idea is that we bring in each one of them into the room and ask them what is the color of this cloth hung from the ceiling. Then they will say, okay, it's red. I can see a red color there. But the actors will say it's blue. And there will be this back and forth kind of argument until, either they kind of like concede or then agree that it's blue in color, or they hold their stand and be like, no, it's red. It's a red cloth that I can see up there. So at the end of the day, about 9 men agreed that it's no, about 9 men held their stand that it's a blue cloth up there. It's not red in color. But all the women agreed that it was, what's it called? It was blue in color. Whereas it's actually a red cloth, is a red cloth on the ceiling. Now the one man that agreed, the only reason he agreed was he said, you know what, I'm tired of arguing. Since you think it's blue, let it be blue so I can leave this place. Do you understand? So it's just to give you an idea of how it's easier. Women have this kind of what's the word? This tendency to conform. You understand? But for men, it's different. You see a man that he will literally go to the woods and build a cabin and be staying there alone. I mean, you don't see a woman doing that kind of stuff. So essentially, that's the whole. Oh my God, I've lost my train of thoughts, but I hope you do
Yeah,
understand
like
what I
I,
was
I
trying to
I've
do.
heard of that experiment before. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, a good portion of the work that I do is letting men know about this conditioning that women experience, and it makes it harder for them to say no. And
Yes.
that's a lot has to do with safety. And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
often dangerous for women to say no or disagree, or, they have emotional danger that they're feeling when they
Yes.
have to disagree with someone. And I think all humans do experience that, but women are conditioned a little bit more to find it dangerous to disagree. And it's shaped by our society, like women that stand up and disagree and argue are often labeled negatively in at times
Yes.
when a man doing the same thing would be considered bold. And
Yes.
so that is
Exactly.
a conditioning that they experience from society.
Yes. I also, to add to that, I think I told a friend this about this same experiment, and he asked me, why do I think it's like that for women? Why does it seem like women tend to, conform? And I explained to him, I think it's because of the survival instinct of women, essentially. I mean, look at it like this. If you have a society of like 20 women and 5 men, there's a chance that such a society might actually go extinct in a few years. You understand? They might have population issues because they are sorry, that's a mistake. If you have a society of let's say 20 men and 5 women, rather, there's a chance that that society might cease to exist in a few years. You understand? But if you have a society of 20 women and 5 men, that such a society will continue to proliferate. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. So, it's kind of like as if men are expendable. It's the reason why they are sent to war. They can go and fight. They tend to risk their lives more and whatnot because of the fact that, it takes one woman about 2 years to give birth to an offspring, cater for that offspring and whatnot. But a man can essentially impregnate like 20 women a day if he's well fed and, well rested. So it just kind of gives you an idea why there's that biological, should I call it imperative or to just be bold, take risks and whatnot. Provided that the man knows the male knows he has an offspring. He has someone that he has already given birth to that is going to, continue his bloodline. There's a chance that he could go out into the world and risk his life and probably just die in a great battle or something. So that's another kind of masculine kind of something. Anyways, you get the gist. So let me move on to. Is there anything you want to add before I move on to the next question?
Yeah, like this idea that men are expendable is a pretty toxic concept. I don't think
Yes.
that many people actually agree with that. There's a lot of
No,
echo chambers online that,
yes. So sorry, can I just interject? I don't
sure.
actually I agree with it. I was just trying to use it to like land my point, if you understand what I
Yeah.
mean. Of course, I wouldn't want to just die or something.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
Yes.
understand. And I think the
Yeah.
world is moving towards a more integrated version of what a man is, which means his
Yeah.
masculine and his feminine are more in alignment.
Yes.
And yeah, the world is asking for more of men than just dying in battle and lifting heavy things. We're
Yeah.
we're being asked to carry more emotional labor. We're being asked to do a lot of the tasks that were, in traditional gender roles or for women. And there's a lot more parity happening in the world now. And the biological things that you mentioned, they're still there,
Yes.
and that still are important to what the difference is between a man and a woman. And I think that is an important thing for society to get a hold of as we're like swinging back and forth between, you know, men's rights and women's rights, and to see that
Yes.
everyone has their own unique contribution to the world.
Yes. Thank you so much for that clarification and thank you for that response. So, a big part of your work is nervous system regulation. Now, how does that affect how men show up in relationships? And what are some methods that men can use to, regulate their nervous system?
Sure. Well, yeah, like our bodies are ancient. Our
Yeah.
bodies are built on instincts that were very helpful tens, hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yes.
And maybe less so now with all of the technology available. And so our bodies still react to the threat of being cast out and being alone as a fear of death. And
Yes.
that was very true, a long, long time ago when humans were evolving. And
Yes.
so men experience rejection, they experience um, a woman's anger, they experience, all sorts of negative emotions as a fear of death. And so another amazing thing about humans is, and especially women, is that they're able to really feel into your energy to feel if you feel safe. And that is a very attractive quality for a man, that he feels safe, maybe even in the face of challenging situations or danger, because
Yes.
he's holding that masculine stability. And so if you train your nervous system to be able to regulate itself in high pressure situations, similar to that you get when you talk to someone you don't know, or you experience an argument and you're feeling defensive, you know, in order to regulate your nervous system and project that energy of safety out into the world that makes other people feel safe, yeah, you have to do
Yes.
a good amount of work. And some of the things that we do are we do a lot of breath training, which means making your body more efficient for handling oxygen and
Yes.
handling carbon dioxide. So we do a lot of exercises that they may do for like free diving and different types of breath holds. And we're training our bodies to handle more carbon dioxide so that we can be more efficient with our oxygen. That's one of the things. There's just, exposure therapy of being exposed to challenging events and,
Yes.
and holding your cool. It's something that's really important. And another part of emotional regulation is just that piece of loving yourself and not seeing every failure as this catastrophic loss, and understanding that the world doesn't necessarily need you to be perfect. But there
Yes.
are, that is a challenging thing to grasp and understand, that you allow yourself to have moments of imperfection. So there's all sorts of different ways that we do it. We also have we use some elements of tantra in our work. We use some elements of erotic reprogramming to allow men to kind of switch away from traditional porn and follow a type of erotica that we invented here called affirmation sluts. That's the brand of
Okay.
it. And we actually help men reprogram their minds using their sexual energy towards
Yes.
more healing endeavors for themselves and more positive thoughts that they have about themselves, and using that time as a ritual instead of an escape. We have quite a few ways for men to be more grounded and stable.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much for that response. And, thank you for the work you're doing. With regards to, trying to move men away from, traditional porn, like you explained, honestly, it, aside the fact that it destroys the whole concept of, copulation, sex, and whatnot, it, I don't know, it shifts the how men look at women. They no longer look at women from, respectful point of view, or from the point of view of loving them. They start to look at them like, objects or tools, objects of pleasure and whatnot. I think that's what porn is actually doing to lots of men and even young boys in our current generation. I'm glad that there are people out there that's actually finding alternatives, as opposed to, just traditional regular porn where everything is just so messed up and rough, to something that can actually, that's more realistic, if you will. You
Yeah,
understand?
because, shaming men or women for their desire, for their sexual desire, is like shaming them for one of the most basic parts of us, the part that
Exactly.
makes us human. And that is present in society because that desire often makes women feel unsafe. But if we can create an environment where you're seeing images of people in love and seeing
Yes.
images of people like cheering you on and
Exactly.
affirming you, instead of, what of a lot of the toxic images that we see are degradation in porn, and you see a lot of just people being taken advantage of. The energy of
Yes.
a lot of different scenes is very poor.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that erotica is inherently bad. So yeah, we work with a more positively tuned erotica.
Exactly, exactly. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. The fact that it's something, and that is way more realistic as opposed to, I know it's for entertainment and just like an Avengers movie, for example, I see the Hulk and whatnot, but I mean, in real life, the Hulk doesn't exist. So we need something that's more attuned to, real life scenarios as opposed to something that's basically unrealistic and people start mistaking it for reality, essentially. Now, a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
men, yeah,
A
okay,
lot of unrealistic expectations of what it means to be a
exactly.
high performing man, especially in sex. So
Yeah,
rewriting that, there's a lot that goes into that is very healthy to unprogram out of yourself.
exactly, exactly. Thank you so much for that beautiful work you're doing. And I'm happy I'm happy to know you're helping a lot of, men, and that's wonderful. Now, a lot of men struggle deeply with rejection. Honestly, the first time I was rejected, oh my God, you have no idea. It was as if the ground should just open up and swallow me whole. And it wasn't even the kind of, there's a kind of rejection that will happen and it's just quiet. No one will even notice that kind of stuff. She'll just be like, I don't want to talk to you. Please leave me alone. No, she literally screamed in my face, and everyone was just like, "What's happening?" Oh my God! I was like, "No, this is not me, honestly." So, so that was how crazy it was. So now, why does rejection hit so hard, and how should men handle
Mm.
rejection?
Sure. I mean, like I said, it hits hard because it's hitting your basic human need for community
Yes,
and
that primal instinct.
that primal instinct. And often people have, their self-confidence is often very tied to what other people are saying and doing around them.
Yes,
So, yeah, that's one of the reasons why it's so challenging. Like it just doesn't feel good to be rejected, no matter who you are. Um, and people that that story that you just shared, like that is, the doomsday scenarios that all
yeah,
men eventually
yeah,
think about as the reason
yeah,
why they shouldn't talk to this person.
yeah. And the funny
And
thing is, sorry to interject. It's inevitable. You cannot escape it. At some point, you're going to experience rejection, definitely. At some point, except you're a Greek god or something.
they probably still get rejected.
Yeah, that too. Please continue, Ross. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Yeah, like this concept of avoiding rejection is similar to the concept of avoiding anything that reminds you that you're not perfect. And, I think the sooner men can recognize that, maybe they're not getting rejected for themselves as a person. This person's rejecting maybe a very specific ask that you made, or they're rejecting you because they're just taking care of themselves.
Yes,
And a lot of times this doesn't have anything to do with your worth as a person. So, we teach men to make asks that are very specific, that allow people to reject you without feeling pressure to say yes. Because almost as bad as being rejected is being accepted verbally when someone is actually a no. So
oh yeah,
that's a thing that women are conditioned to do, is to fawn. It's called, to say yes when you mean no, when it's not in your best interest.
yes,
And we have to actually, as men, understand that that is a fear response, a survival response, and
yes,
listen into the energy of a response instead of just the words. So yeah, that's something that's coming up recently, and in men's interactions with women. And this woman that that yelled at you, everyone's worst like nightmare of being accused of being a predator. And
yes,
this
exactly.
is definitely something that's alive in the world today. And I think what's needed is a little bit more attunement to what the energy of specifically women, when they're agreeing, and really searching for that like true F yes, like not waiting for a maybe. You're trying to convince someone, coming back to like, you don't need to convince people of what you're asking of them. It's either good for them or it's not. And
Yes,
if they need to be convinced, it's often at their detriment and eventually your detriment, because you're you're being pulled into something with someone who's not a full yes. And that's just as bad as getting a no.
yes, yes. Thank you so much for that clarification and that response, Ross. Now, Ross, there's often tension between desire and shame. Now, how can men express their desire in a healthy and respectful way without incurring shame?
Sure. I mean, the best way is just to have desire and express it within yourself without anyone else involved. You know, to
Yes,
enjoy your desire, your basic human instincts without needing anyone else to be a part of that. And that could be in a sexual sense, that could actually just be in enjoying nature, that can be in enjoying hobbies, enjoying the most simple things in life, like running your hands through warm water and being very present to the subtleties of life that we can enjoy. I think that's the
yes,
that's the baseline. And then when it comes to desire with other people, I think it comes down to really offering choice at every step of the way. Consent has evolved a lot these days, and to avoid that situation where women are saying yes to things that they're not a full yes to, we
Yes.
really need to slow down as men. And if you have desire, it's totally okay to have desire. And it's okay to actually share that you have that desire, as long
Yeah.
as the energy of it is not asking that person to have a requirement, or that you're entitled to this reciprocation of desire. So I don't think there's
Yeah.
any problem with sharing your desire. I think there's a lot of shame around men sharing their desire, but I think if it's done in the right energy with the right level of attunement to understand when it's appropriate and when it's received, I think
Yeah.
that's super, super important for men.
Yeah. And to add to everything you said, if your desire is very much realistic, then it's no problem. Of course, don't have an unrealistic type of desire, if you understand what I mean. So I think this leads to consent and leadership. You emphasize consent forward leadership. This is the first time I've heard, these two words or these three words used in this kind of way. Now, what does that actually look like in real life interactions? And can you give us an example of when you've ever applied consent forward leadership?
Sure, like the biggest part of leadership is knowing what you want, right? So
Yes.
if you can have a vision of what your ideal future is, whether it's long term or short term, and you can communicate that with someone, then you are exercising the first element of leadership. And, so I know what I want, and then I'm going to offer that to you as an option, as a choice. And
Yes.
that is a basic element of consent, is like every step of the way, the people that are in your sphere have choice to take care of themselves, to say yes or no for themselves. So, yeah, leadership means knowing what you want, asking for it without expectation or entitlement, and
Oh,
then,
wow.
it's celebrating if they say no, moving on to someone who's a better fit.
Yes.
And that's a basic element of consent.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarification. It actually makes a lot of sense now. Thank you so, so much, Ross. Now, Ross, you mentioned that presence is trainable. How can someone begin to develop that? This reminds me of a story. A memory rather, a memory back from, I think it was secondary school. Okay, Ross, you live in the US, right?
Yes.
So secondary school is kind of like our high school year. We have
Hmm.
primary, second. I think you would understand. So yeah, secondary school. Back then in secondary school, we had this guy that was in my class. He had this kind of like, this presence. He wasn't a bully. He wasn't necessarily someone that used to like look for trouble or piss people off. He was just a very chill guy, but he had this kind of presence where the moment he would enter a place, everyone would just notice that okay, the vibe has changed. Like this kind of like this boss type kind of. I don't know how to explain it, but he just had this kind of presence. So
Yeah.
how can a man develop that kind of presence where you step into a place, you're not like it's not like you're imposing danger or you seem dangerous or anything of the sort. You just have this presence that just makes people want to, people just feel that oh, someone just entered the place. There's someone here. How can a man develop such a presence?
Yeah, man, that's big depth energy. That's you feeling safe in your body and broadcasting that out into the room. And when
Yeah.
someone is feeling safe in their body, that inspires other people to feel safe too. And it does tangibly change the energy of a room. So like how do you train presence? Well,
Yes.
the, one of the signals that's broadcast is your heart rate, your overall nervousness. So if you can train to keep your heart rate lower and to be less affected by things that are a little like scary in life, and give yourself the
Yes.
opportunity to practice that, that's super important. And I think like one of the biggest ways to do that is through some sort of mindfulness meditation or breath work. And what that's doing is, the mind is constantly churning with thoughts, and those can be positive and these can be negative. And it's very challenging for the mind to stay on one topic. And if you want to stay like on a positive topic, it's very challenging to stay there. And I think even the best meditators and the most present people still find their mind wandering. But the skill is actually to notice when your mind is wandering, to notice when you've drifted away from where you want to be, and just like gently pulling yourself back. And a
Yes.
man who's like deep in his presence has that skill. He's been working on that skill for a long time and approaching mastery of that. So yeah, the ability to understand when you've shifted away from the mindset that you want to have, and just like pulling yourself back gently for doing that. And the
Oh,
other the
well,
other part is just like this confidence piece, understanding that you don't need to have everything perfect. And then you're not on edge for yourself to worry about the little tiny mistakes that you make. No one else is worrying about that, but they can tell when you are. So that's a
yes,
big part of
100%.
presence.
Wow, thank you so much for that clarification, Ross. And it takes me back to when I used to be younger, when I was used to be a bit shy, and I would be speaking to people, and I tend to stutter, kind of like a little bit. I'll be scared to express myself, and I it was almost as if I could not even speak very well. But I've kind of outgrown that, and still continue to develop that presence, my confidence. So I'm still working on that. Definitely
Well,
started
you're
going
doing
to the
great.
gym.
You have a podcast. You're doing okay, man.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. And I still want to get better because sometimes I still tend to stutter. I also tend to like, I'll be talking about something and I'll kind of like just veer off topic or lose my train of thought sometimes. I mean, it's a human thing, but as time goes on, we get better at it. Now, Ross, I want to talk about integrity. Now, how do we build integrity, for both men and women? How do we build integrity in relationships today?
Sure. I mean, I think the cornerstone of integrity is accountability. So
Yeah,
just recognizing your impact, no matter what your intention was, recognizing your impact. And, then when you don't catastrophize that impact as you're a bad person, you can then look at things and apologize and do better next time. So accountability is an important part of integrity. Just transparency and truth. This goes back
yes,
to giving people the gift of choice. So if you're
yes,
honest and transparent about what's going on in you, the thoughts that you're having, the doubts that you're having, when it's appropriate to share those things, it builds a lot of trust in someone because no one expects you to be perfect, like I keep saying.
yeah.
So yeah, being able to be transparent, be accountable when you mess up, and just being open to listening without an agenda.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that response, Ross. So, Ross, I need to take a little bit of a breather. I have a set of rapid fire questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
So, you can either answer with a phrase or a sentence, and both options are available. So, the first one is strength or sensitivity?
Yes.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay, 100%. I agree to. Control or awareness?
Awareness.
Yeah, if you're not aware, I mean, you wouldn't even know what to control. You could be controlling something else or something that may cause, your downfall or something. Just
Yeah,
blabbering.
awareness also has an element of control because when you're aware of something, you can make conscious choice about it.
Exactly, exactly. Confidence or presence?
Um, I think presence, because confidence is something that can come and go, that may be fleeting for the moment, but
Yes,
presence is always the truth.
wonderful. Fear or expression? I mean, this is obvious. Definitely expression.
Yeah, I love. I mean, it's better. It's a better
Yeah,
feeling to be expressed than to be in fear, though. Fear is
yeah,
a
yeah.
natural part of the human experience, and you can't avoid it. Uh,
Yes,
but you can have expressions of fear, and as long as you're being authentic.
that's good. One word that defines masculinity.
Groundedness.
Oh, yes, I agree. I agree 100%. There's not like a man who's grounded. He knows his worth. He knows himself. He understands the world around him. He's realistic. And, yeah. Do you have anything else you might want to add? Just to make that sink in. It's almost there.
Yeah, I mean, part of what a man's gift to the world is to experience the swirling chaos of the feminine and of life in general, and to
Yes.
stay strong in your own convictions, to stay strong in your own love of yourself, and to not let yourself be blown off course by those things. And I think that is the essence of masculinity.
Oh, wow. That was such a wonderful clarification. Thank you so much for that, Ross. Now, Ross, this is my final question for today before we wrap up. If a man is listening right now and he feels lost, unsure of himself, and confused about how to show up in today's world. What would you want him to understand?
Really, I would like you to understand that it's okay to be a work in progress, that no one's expecting you to show up exactly how perfect, looks like. And I would recommend that you find a support group to talk to get the issues that are bumping around inside your head out of you, whether it's on paper, whether it's to a group of people. I think having a group of men to talk to as a man is super important to have, to release that fear of being vulnerable in front of men. And then that has, echoes out into your entire life when you feel safe to share around other men. So joining a men's circle. And if you're really struggling, I would recommend that you find the hobbies and things that you like to do that bring you joy, and forget about your agenda and your 15, 20-year plan. Find things that are enjoyable for you. Find things that light you up and start there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that inspiring word. Those inspiring words, Ross. That was wonderful. Ross, this has been a thought-provoking and important conversation about masculinity, self-awareness, and how men can show up with more clarity and integrity. It's been such a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Thank you for your insights, your wisdom, and of course, your inspiring words. Where can my audience learn more about your work and possibly connect with you?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate the conversation. Yeah, so I have a an online community. It's just for men, and you can see that at try.embodimen.com. So try.embodimen.com. And that has courses for developing this big depth energy concept that I was talking about. We have some of our conscious erotica on there. We have men's circles twice a month where we talk about the issues going on in our lives and we support each other. And it's just a beautiful community that continues to grow. So all of the concepts I talk about are covered in that community.
Wonderful, wonderful. Once again, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I'm definitely going to add all the websites and all the links to the show notes when I eventually upload the video. And Ross, do have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself and
Thank you
continue
so much
cleaning
for
into the
having me.
vibe.
You
Yeah,
take care,
take
my
care
friend.
for sure.